Good evening, good evening, good evening. Came on for a late night conversation. Wanted to welcome you to the Pulpit View podcast, where we dive deep and pull back the curtain on what's going on in not just the pastor's life, but the leader's life, and how we can make more of an impact in the body of Christ and the world. Here tonight, if this is your first time joining us, my name is Stephen Garrett. I am the proud pastor of Bethlehem Missionary Baptist Church. I've pastored in total for almost 20 years. I'm getting ready to celebrate 20 years with my beautiful wife, and I have been a leader for even longer. And so I'm so grateful tonight for you joining us tonight. Here's the only request that I have for you. Would you like, subscribe, and share, and let us know where you're watching from tonight? As we go live tonight, I want to have some conversation, because I think some of this is warranted in our times that we're in. Some of the conversations that I feel we're not having are warranted in today's time. So tonight we're talking about the downfalls of comparison and imposter syndrome. I want to share this conversation with you tonight because I want to share this conversation with you tonight because I realize that as a leader, one of the things that I am coming across more and more is leaders that are struggling with imposter syndrome. I'll say it again. Leaders that are struggling with imposter syndrome. They are going through, it is a constant struggle um, to manage all of the requirements that you have. And then here it is, you are not just leading effectively, but can I be honest? You're also leading with hesitation. You are showing up, but you're showing up with this scar that's on you. You're being present, but you're being present with watching everyone else and feeling maybe if you had this, maybe if you had um if you had this type of background, if you had this type of education, that you would be able, here it is, to be more effective in ministry. And the problem becomes we sometimes show up, but we show up with less than ourselves, because the truth of the matter is we're showing up with the weight and burden that was never meant to be put on us. And so here it is. I want to lead with this scripture. Um, each one, for Galatians 6, 4 through 5, each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else, for each one should carry their own load. Why did I share? This is Galatians 6, 4 through 5. Why did I share this post? Because me and the congregation are going through a book in our Bible study called We Want You Here. And the one of the chapters dealt with how we can get so caught up in social media, how we can be so focused on what others are doing in their lives because it looks as if it's perfect, that we hesitate in moving in our lives. And this set with me because, as many of you all know, if you've been following for a while now, you know that I am a advocate when it comes to therapy, coaching. I'm an advocate when it comes to going after getting better and getting the help you need to. One of the things that my coach shared with me that I want to share with you tonight is, he said, Steve, you are crushing it in many areas, but your inability to examine your wins have caused you has caused you the difficulty and the sad case of comparing yourself to others and not recognizing the wins you had. And I want to share with you tonight, as we deal with the downfalls of comparison and imposter syndrome, three things that I think is holding you back in ministry because you are spending too much time comparing yourself and dealing with imposter syndrome. And we're going to break this down for the rest of the month. This is going to be our conversation as we go through the month, finish the month of February. So the first downfall is you do not get to see the wins. You are unable to see the wins. When you are comparing yourselves with others and imposter syndrome sets in, what happens is you can be crossing the finish line and not realize it. I'll say it again. You can be crossing the finish line and not realize it. I want to share with you a story that will probably be very helpful. I like to watch track and field. There was this one particular race that I saw where where one of the athletes, they had been stressing the whole time. And so as they're racing with all their might, what happens is this, y'all. What happens is they find themselves closing out to the finish line, but they don't even recognize it. They don't recognize that they are ahead of the pack. They didn't believe they even had the potential of winning. Here's what they did. And I want to share this with you because I think this is real important. As he is closing to the end, he is in such amazement that he is ahead of the pack that anxiety comes up and he starts to look back to see how far someone's closing in on him because he's afraid they're about to overtake him. He's right there at the finish line and he turns his head and he starts looking and he trips. And he does not finish the race first. He finishes the race second. Here it is. He trips and he's so far ahead that when he trips, he is able to get back up and still make it to second place, even though he failed. I want to share with you, some of us, we're literally on the brink of the breakthrough. We're literally on the brink of crossing the finish line, but we cannot appreciate the win because we're so focused on comparing ourselves with others' races. We're so focused on comparing ourselves with their journey, with their trial, with their struggle, that what has happened is that we do not see that we are closing the gap, and we are closing the gap to what we are aiming for. And so if we're going to be able to focus on the win, if one of the downfalls of comparison or imposter syndrome is that we cannot celebrate our wins, the question then we have to do is, what are we really focused on? Are we focused on the ones that are in the race with us, or are we focused on the goal of the race? Truth of the matter is, a lot of us will make mistakes because we are testing others and what they've accomplished and what they've done, and we have not yet spent time to see how far we've made it. Let me share with you a story from a pastor that I had the privilege of meeting some years ago. He was at the end of his rope in ministry. Sadly, he stepped away from ministry, but in his mind, he thought all the other pastors had it better than him. He called me and said, Stephen, I'm struggling with ministry in this moment, and I am considering leaving. And I'm saying, what is making you consider leaving? He shared with me that the reason that he was considering leaving is because he felt he had failed his family. He felt that because his children had gone through some things and that they had dealt with certain struggles, that he hadn't been the present dad that he wanted to be. He had felt that the church was taking him for granted, which in some cases this may be true, but he felt like anybody else could do the job better than him. One of the struggles with being able to embrace your wins is when you're in comparison or when you are dealing with imposter syndrome, you are so focused on the problem, you can never see the celebrations. And so as me and him talked, I asked certain questions. And here was my first question. Who has told you that you failed your family? He said, easily, me. I said, has your wife told you that you have not been a good husband? He said, no. I said, has your wife told you that she wants a divorce? I don't know the man, so I'm getting feedback from him. He said, no, she has not. I said, have your children told you? I said, have any of your children in jail right now or addicted to anything? He said, no, they're not. He said, one dealt with some struggles, but he's overcome the struggles. We've made it through some things. And he said he's got a good job now and he's making some huge strides. And so as we're having this conversation, I said, so when has the church told you that you are not good enough? He said, well, they haven't, but they've shown it in these areas. And he told me about two of the members that were disgruntled with him. And as a pastor, I can relate to this because sometimes the few seem to have the voice of the many. Sometimes the few seem to have the voice of be louder than the voice of the many. Let's say it that way. And so he's sharing with me. And so as we're going through, I'm asking him these questions, and he comes to a resolution. And with sadness in his voice, he said, man, he said, I may not be as bad as a dad as I thought I was, because that was the thing that made him feel like he was breaking. He felt like he failed his family. And so I asked, I said, how many people do you know that have dealt with family members with addiction? And he named several of them. I asked the question, I said, how many people do you know that have family members that have stepped away and fallen apart? He named several of them. I said, so why do you think you're void of problems and your job has caused you the problem? Your responsibility, your calling has caused you the problem. He said, I guess I just want to be there more. And the reason he said this sorrowfully, he said, Stephen, I have to tell you, I really called thinking you were going to tell me one thing. But then after we had this conversation, he said, I recognize I might have been too hasty in my movements. And I said, what? He said, I've already left the church. He said, I've already left the church. He said, I gave them just yesterday my resignation effective immediately. He said, and I've stepped away. And I said, have you talked to your family? He said he talked to his family, and his family was saddened to hear it. And he said, now that I think about it, he said, I really hadn't been a bad father. In fact, this is what he declared. He said, I've been a better father than I recognized. And I want to share with you the reason that comparison messes us up from recognizing our wins, because I am painting unrealistic expectations based off of miniature perceptions or micro perceptions. You know that when you look on Facebook, Facebook is a microcosm of someone's totality of life. Let me share with you something. This past week was my wife's birthday. Here's the microcosm of something major that happened. Now I work in a different field, so I have to wait for finances to come in. Whereas when I was in the barbering industry, money came a little bit easier around, and I could count on it a certain time, right? And so here it is. my wife's birthday, I shared with her afterwards. I said, this came together in one day in the last moment. I talked to the Lord about some things coming through at the last moment that painted a beautiful picture. I'm talking about the restaurant came through, the Airbnb came through, all these things came through in the last moment. And the biggest thing, the biggest part of the gift was the horse. So I had to pick and choose these things and put things together as I had to put it. No one saw that. Here's what everyone saw on Facebook. They saw my wife smiling. They saw her horseback riding. They saw her enjoying her food. They saw the beauty of one moment, but they did not see the things that went into that one moment. And I want to share with you that the reason you cannot enjoy your win by comparison is because you're comparing to someone's micro moment, a microcosm of something major that has happened. We're comparing ourselves to pastors who have led for decades and have lost members, have had to bury people, who have had to cry sometimes, who have had to deal with the struggle of trying to work on and build on the marriage. They've had to put things together, and we get to see a moment of success, but we do not get to see the years of extensive work. And the truth of the matter is, by comparing yourself, you are taking and stealing the opportunity for God to get the glory and for you to get the growth. Woo! I'll say it again. By comparing yourself, you are stealing the opportunity for God to get the glory and for you to get the growth. Because the truth of the matter is, I knew that although I had a great idea, the reason God got the glory for my wife's birthday is because things came and played like I needed them to in the right step. I'll just tell you about the beautiful farm, more than horses, and more than a horse farm in Montgomery, Alabama. Here it is. It's a local owned, black owned horse farm. Phenomenal people, phenomenal thing. And here it is. I was looking for something specific. And when I called the lady, she said, I will not know until the day before if my handler can show up. She said, Mr. Garrett, I will not know until the day before if my handler can show up. So I knew what I wanted for my wife, but I had to set up a plan B. And can I tell you, the plan B was not as great as plan A. And so as I'm praying, she calls literally exactly 24 hours from our call and said, we are on. I can get one of my handlers here to lead your wife around. And as excited as I was about that, I had to recognize it was mostly the prayers that I was praying, because I could not control what was on their table for that day. This was an aspect that was outside of me. And so I want to share with you that many times your comparison to someone else's moment is being compared without recognizing their work, their momentum, the meticulous actions that they've taken to get there. So don't let comparison or imposter syndrome, here it is, help steal your wins. The second thing, not only does imposter syndrome or comparison steal your wins, it causes you to lose focus of the work. It causes you to lose focus of the work. So some years ago, I was going through a hard time in my ministry. Many of you all have heard my story before, but it was a difficult time in my ministry. 2016, hit by a car in October. October, I'm hit by a car. Right after I get hit by a car, I find myself sadly in December. preparing for the loss of my father. Actually, it was the day after Christmas, December 26th. I am on my way to Detroit, Michigan, as my father has been hospitalized. New Year's Day, I discover my father has passed as I'm on my way to bury my wife's grandfather. I get there. I am told that one of my beloved members have passed. I get back to some chaotic situations in the church, right? Some things that some people have a misunderstanding of where my heart is at while I'm doing this, but they also do not see my grief. And the truth of the matter is, if you've ever been a leader, you understand that sometimes you gotta heal while hurting yourself. And so I find myself in a process of hurting while still being active and trying to help others heal. Here's what happened. One of my friends called me and was celebrating the church that they had been pastoring for the same amount of time that I had been pastoring, and telling me about how they rallied against them and not against them, but rallied for them and all these things. And so I'm comparing a situation that he's having with a few folk that do not understand the heart of their pastor and are hurting as well. So I'm hurting while helping, while healing, but I'm also comparing. And so I literally had a conversation with my wife, and I can be vulnerable with this now. I shared that I'm not even helping anybody. I don't know why I'm doing this, because this is a testimony of what I'm not doing. This is what I share with my wife at the time. And I will always be grateful for Bethlehem, because it was a member that I didn't even realize I'd been a blessing to, that showed up and shared with me, Pastor, I know it's been hard. I know that you've been going through, but I want you to know how much of a blessing you've been to me. And seeing you persevere, I want you to know there's so many folk that are praying for you right now. I needed to hear that in the moment that I was comparing someone else's moment of joy, that here it is, there was great things happening. And sometimes our comparing with others is taking us away from the work that we are currently doing. Because as Nehemiah shares, there are some men that come to approach Nehemiah as he is building the wall, and they make the current situation that they're dealing with, as they are looking at what Nehemiah is doing, as more important than Nehemiah's work. But because he was not comparing himself with other leaders, he states this: the work is too important for me to come down. And I don't want you to miss out on the opportunity of growth because you are comparing yourself to somebody else who it's their season to have this particular celebration. It's their season to have this particular level of expansion. And sometimes we miss out on what God is working out in us because we are comparing what God has worked out in others. I'll say it again. Sometimes we're missing what God is working out in us by comparing what he's working out in others. And so listen, if this is helpful, I need you to just type it in the chat that this is helping me. It's helping me. Here's the problem with comparison. Comparison has a tendency to block your eyesight. Let me put it this way. Driving down the road, you have a nice car. The other day here, to show you a real life example, driving down the road, I saw this beautiful BMW. Beautiful BMW. They had passed me. They had passed me while I'm driving down the road, and I was in my mother-in-law's car at the time, and I'm driving down her car, and she has a Nissan Sentra, right? A little small Tic Tac type car, great on gas. And I see this beautiful BMW driving down the road, and I'm like, man, that's nice. That's a real nice car. This car is this. This car is this. Boy, I can't wait to get me one of them cars one day. As I am coming up over the hill, guess what I see? I see that same BMW on the side of the road as I'm driving past. Now, that's not to highlight their moment of tragedy. That is to say, I'm in a car that is able to get me to my destination. But at the moment, I was focused on a car that was stalling. Some of us are comparing ourselves to ministry, to businesses, to people that look like they have it all together. But in all reality, they are struggling, and we're comparing ourselves with things that have flaws. I'll say it again. We're comparing ourselves with things that are not perfect, with things that are not where we think they should be. One of the greatest testimonies to help me focus on the work was given to me by Pastor Curran Lee. Pastor Curran Lee shared with me as I sat down with him one time in an intimate place. I was asking him about the church, and he pastors a very well-known church in DeKalb County. And here's what he says. He shares with me in Atlanta. He shares with me. He said, Stephen, every church goes through highs and lows, but some know how not to focus on the lows. And I want to share that with you. I want to share that with you because sometimes our problem is we will focus on a church that it appears as if they're not going through a low, but they've just discovered how not to focus on it. They just discovered how not to focus on it. In fact, he shared with me he regularly he goes on. Got tongue twisted there for a moment. He goes before the congregation and shares what they brought in the Sunday before. He said, Stephen, whether it is high or whether it's low, I tell them thank you for the gift. He said, now our congregation knows what it takes for this church to run, for us to pay those that are on staff, for us to do the ministry in the community. He said, but I do not focus on what they did not achieve or what they did not hit. I am grateful for everything they gave. He said, I'm grateful for everything they gave. He said, I don't even always tell them what our goal is. He said, but I let them always know I'm grateful. And so sometimes what we can do when we're comparing ourselves, we feel not like we're not fit to be in that place, is what we'll do is we will find ourselves in a place where we are looking at the people that are doing the work, and we feel like they can do the work better than us. And the truth of the matter is, they're doing it the same. They're just trying to make it. They're just trying to stay focused. They're just trying to be passionate about the goals that they have. And so, not only does it make you miss the wins, not only does it take you off the sight of the work, but here it is. You might lose your moment. Woo! You might lose your moment. Comparing yourself can cause you to lose your moment. What do I mean? What do I mean when I say lose your moment? I believe there are seasons of growth that we have. And when you are in comparison, you can miss out on the time you need to till, the time you need to plant, the time you need to harvest. Let me share with you. So I love gardening. I love gardening. I love gardening. And one thing that um you got to be careful with when you are planting is being so focused on how someone else is doing great in their garden that you stop doing the work in your garden and you miss the season to plant what you know you need to plant. Here's what I mean. So every plant has a different season or different time that it should be planted if you're planting it in nature. Now, you might have a greenhouse, you might have certain things where there's a level. You have created a culture where you can plant consistently in. But if you want to plant spinach, there's a certain time because spinach likes cool areas. Uh, Potatoes like cool seasons. But funny enough, kale is a little bit different. Kale, collard greens, you can plant them in a hotter season, but here it is, they're a little bit more of a sturdy plant. So you need a certain amount of time frame. If you are so focused on what others are doing or how others can be are a little bit further than you are, what you can do is miss your season of planting, miss your season of harvesting. And what happens is you go beyond the time or the opportunity that God has assigned in that moment. Now, the grace of God is that he always spins the block. I'll tell anybody, he always spins the block. But that does not mean you don't have to deal with the season that comes after. There's a Proverbs talking about the ant and the wisdom that she carries, that she plants up for the season. She harvests for the season when she cannot do the work. And so she has something for the season, right? She has something for the dry seasons. I want to share with you as I get ready to get off tonight that one of the downfalls of comparing yourself with others, one of the downfalls of really believing that you don't belong there, is that you can miss the moments God has given you. One of my biggest struggles in ministry was I was always working to be perfect. I was always working to be perfect. I would be done with the sermon. Hear me. I'm not saying I was being effective in my perfection. I'm saying that I would preach a sermon and God would move in the house. God would send people to encourage me and tell me how the Lord used that message to change their life. And I couldn't hear it because I was so focused on me, using the wrong wording in some area. I was so focused on me taking too long of a dramatic pause. I would listen to that sermon over again, and I couldn't even embrace the impact that God was doing. And so I share that with you because as leaders, you might be in a season that God is telling you to plant. And as you are planting, you can get sidetracked by believing because somebody's garden is bigger than yours that there's no reason for you to have what you have in yours. Because somebody is harvesting in this season, that your harvest will not be effective. And I want to just share with you that being able to embrace the moment, being able to take that moment in and celebrate the moment, not just the work, but the moment, the joy of the moment, sitting back and seeing the work you've done and realizing that there's not a seed that has broken the ground yet. Nothing has germinated, but you see the work you've done. And the work is going to produce fruit. I need you to listen. If you are watching this and you're struggling, I need you to put in the chat that my work is going to produce fruit. My work will produce fruit. It takes you embracing the moment, because even when the work is done, you might not see the fruit from the work just yet. You planted your garden, you've tilled your soil, you've laid it, you've done everything you're supposed to do, and now you're dealing with bare ground. And it looks like nothing's going to break through. But I need you to embrace the moment of the work that you've done. And the reason that I started with the wins is because what encouraged us to get back to the work are the small wins. What encouraged us to embrace the work that we've done is embracing the moments after the work. What have I been called to do in that season? I'll share this with you and I'm done, because I want you to move from comparison and imposter syndrome to success. Next, and we're going to have some follow-up conversations on this, because I think it's needed in this season. Here it is. The way we move is by accepting the season we're in. I'll say it again. The way we move from comparison or imposter syndrome is by accepting the season we're in. What do you mean? I'm so glad you asked. Paul has a conversation. He says, Paul, I planted, Apollos watered, but it was God that gave the increase. When you know what you've been called to do, you can embrace the moment and not worry about what someone else is called to do. If I'm called to plant, then why am I comparing myself with someone who's called to water? If I'm called to water, why am I comparing myself with someone who is called to reap the harvest from the labor that I've done? Not everyone has the same role in the kingdom, and not everyone is expected to do the same thing. But I want to share with you that only shifts when you can embrace your calling. You can embrace your purpose. You can embrace while you are expected to be here in this season. So as we move from comparison, as we move out of imposter syndrome, what I want you to move to is to a place in your heart, into a place in your mind where you go into embracing what God has called you to. And next week, we're going to move from comparison to calling. Next week, we're going to move from comparison to calling. Because I believe when you move from comparison to calling, what ends up happening is you start living in a way that challenges the culture. Listen, as we get ready to get off tonight, I want to say thank you for joining me, but I need some help from you. This is what I need from you. We are moving more and more closer to our YouTube account. I need you, if you have not yet went to YouTube, to like the page, to like Reverend Stephen K. Garrett, or just type in the pulpit view on YouTube. If you're watching from YouTube now, all I need you to do is like, subscribe, and share. Would you also tell somebody else about it when you share it? If this has been impactful to you, if you know that I've been allowing myself to deal with comparison and imposter syndrome for too long. I've been allowing myself to measure up to folk or feel like that I don't belong there for too long. And I want to shift that. And I believe that tonight's conversation is helping me shift from comparing myself with others or feeling like I don't belong in that space, or feeling like I don't belong in that room. would you share with them and let them know there is somebody that has a word for them tonight? And then if this has really, really touched you and you say, I need to deal with this on a deeper level. I need to deal with this conversation because I felt as if I had failed my family. I felt as if the church cannot get better. I felt that I was in the wrong role, even though I believe God placed me in that role. That means this message is not just for you, but there's more work to do. And I want to work that work with you. I want to do the deep dive and let's develop some things together to help you through the process. I have the privilege on so many levels of working with men and women on dealing with some of their deep-seated things and coming up with strategies and solutions to come through with that. And so as a pastor, I want to work with you. I want to work with that husband. I want to work with that leader. I want to work with you and help you see that you're already doing the work. You're already doing the work, but maybe your strategy is off. Maybe your system isn't placed right. Maybe you haven't communicated in the ways that you needed to. And the way that shifts, the way that changes, is it starts with a conversation. So DM me, connect with me, and I'm so excited to be on this journey with you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a blessed night.